Welcome to the Tips and Tools for Virtual Events, presented by the Asia Pacific Regional Digital Capacity.
Robin, you're on mute.
Welcome, ladies, to the Tips and Tools for Virtual Events, presented by the Asia Pacific Digital Capacity Building team. And I have with me some young women from across the region who've also worked on some of the digital events that have happened across our region. So before we get too far in, we just need to do some housekeeping. So firstly, I'll ask that you keep your microphone on mute if you're not talking. We were expecting a really large number of people in today. It looks like our registrations have far outstripped our attendees, and that's okay. It does mean that we have a bit more flexibility in what we're going to do today. So we may well ask you to unmute and talk to us today, since I don't have 150 people. We've got a more manageable group and we can have a bit more of an informal discussion, which will be great. Just a heads up is that we will be recording today's session. If you don't feel comfortable being recorded, we completely understand, and you're more than welcome to turn your camera off. We have no issues with that. Finally, we have the chat operating here in Zoom. If you've got any concerns, I have Amy, a member of the Digital Capacity Building team, answering questions in the chat. Hey, Amy, and she'll be able to help you out. We also have Slido running, and that's going to be our interactive tool for today. And if you've got questions for our Q&A at the end, I'd love for you to put it into Slido. You'll have a polls option, and then there's a Q&A option when you open up the app, or if you're working on the Slido website, where you can pop those questions, and you can also see what other questions people want to answer at the end of today's session. And you can vote for the questions that we're going to hopefully have plenty of time to answer. So now that the housekeeping is done, let's get started. Virtual events over recent months have definitely become known globally and across all sectors of the community as potentially being rather long, boring, maybe a little unexciting, and with limited engagement. Many people are actually somewhat over having video meetings and webinars. But my question for you today is, what if we could do it differently? What if you could create a virtual event that transports participants to a whole new world? A world where participants are engaged, excited, and don't want to leave. A place to connect with others, to learn, to share, and to grow together. What if you could create a virtual event that felt like you really were at a WAGS international event? So this is the Young Women's event that took place in late January, that for many of us who were there, it really did feel like our own little bubble of an event world. So today, we'd like to show you a whole new world of virtual events. We'd like to take you on a magic carpet ride to show you this world. But first, we want to make sure you're all going to get the most out of today's webinar. So I'd like for you to share, using Slido, what type of virtual event would you like to run next? So you've signed up for today's webinar. We'd like to know, what are your plans? Because that way we can tailor what we're talking about today a little more to our audience. So I'm hoping that Slido has gone live, and it has. I can see people responding. Yes. So once I've got a significant number of responses, I'll then be able to share with you the results from that. So maybe your next event's going to be a webinar. It could be a series of webinars. It also could be a single or multi-day event. They come in all shapes and sizes. And your responses that come in, I've got about 13 people so far who've responded. Let me see if it's going to go any higher. I'm just worried that if I click the button and move it to the answers, it's going to cut everyone else off. So please let me know if you get cut off if I hit the button. So I've got about 16 responses. I'm going to click the button. So most people who've logged in today are looking at running webinars. So what we're going to present today, it is relevant to webinars and it's also relevant to all the other types of events. All I advise is that some things are going to be more relevant to webinars or more relevant to big, large events. So take what's going to work for you and your type of event and run with it. So over the last 2 years, COVID has given us the chance to learn a lot about virtual events, and a lot of research has generated various stats and statistics. Now, these aren't dedicated to nonprofits, but they give us a bit of an indication. So come join me on a little bit of a quiz. We are still using Slido. And the first question I'm going to pose to you is, what do you think is the most popular reason for people wanting to join a webinar or a virtual event? Is it to socialize? Is it to learn? Is it to play games? Or is it to network? So what do you think most people would be joining webinars and virtual events for? So for those who know Slido, and when you do quizzes like this, it's a bit of a competition. So there is the person, sorry, let me put it this way. The person who manages to answer the most questions the quickest is quite likely to be awarded the prize at the end of this little 3-question quiz. So I've got about 10 people who responded. What do you think is going to be the biggest reason? Okay, I'm going to hit the button. To learn. I'm so pleased you guys said that because it's 100% true. The biggest reason people will join these type of events is to learn. And I guess that's what we've promoted today's event about, not necessarily around the socializing or the networking. Networking is most certainly the next big reason that people will join. So we have included a little bit of a networking activity in a breakout room today. But I will admit our focus today very much is around learning and not necessarily the others. So gives you a little bit of an insight. Next question is, what do you think is commonly the largest expense when it comes to running a virtual event? Is it the guest speakers? Is it the hosting platform? So whatever tool or platform you choose to host your event on? Is it the cameras and microphones that you need to make sure you've got the perfect sound and the perfect picture? Or is it all those additional little tools that we tend to try and use to promote engagement? And while we're talking this through, if you are struggling to access Slido, certainly use either the website or the QR code, and it will actually take you straight to our Slido today. And our hashtag or code for today is AP Digital. So let's see. Well done, ladies. It is most certainly the hosting platform. It can be a significant expense, and it really does depend on the type of event you're running as to the sort of the tech that you're going to use. And we'll explore that a little bit more today. Our final quiz question is, what do you think participants find the most annoying in a virtual event? Is it a poor audio? Is it that really messy background because they are in their home or in their office where things aren't quite as neat and tidy? Is it a poor internet connection, thus dropping in and out, both on their own side or the presenter side? Or is it poor video that, you know, cuts in, it's a bit fuzzy, isn't focusing properly? What do you think is going to be the biggest issue for participants? Because obviously these are the sorts of things that will unfortunately make them choose not to participate in your event. Poor internet connection. It is most certainly a big contender, but the biggest one from the research is actually poor audio. Most people can cope without the video being really good. Most people can cope with the messy backgrounds, but a poor internet connection, obviously it can also contribute to it, but the poor audio is probably, and I've just completely messed up my own slide. It is poor internet connection, but poor audio definitely comes in a very, very quick second to both of those. So if you can't hear and you're not able to catch things in the webinar, you're going to lose track and you'll probably just choose to discontinue your involvement in the event. So who is our fastest winner today? Charlotte, well done. Now, Charlotte is from Girl Guides Hong Kong. I'm thinking, yes, I've got a nod from Charlotte. Charlotte is from Girl Guides Hong Kong, and she is a member of the core mission team for Girl Experience as well. So she's joining us for a couple of reasons today. And she's paying close attention to this because she's going to work collaboratively with the digital capacity building team in the weeks to come. So now that you've got a little bit more information around virtual events, let us take you on a journey. So today we're going to share with you our top 10 tips for running a virtual event. And we're going to let this magic carpet ride begin. So tips 1 and 2 today. Firstly, define your strategy. Why are you running the event? Why does this event need to take place? What problem are you trying to solve? You need to be really clear around this, at whatever the issue is that you're trying to address or what you're trying to overcome, because this will then drive the rest of your event strategy and the way you approach the event. So are you trying to retain members? Are you recruiting members? Have you got a demand for some training or development? This why will guide every decision you make, whether it's content, technology, format, promotion, or evaluation. It's all going to come back to why you're doing it. The next part of your strategy is who. Who is your audience going to be? The easiest way to have a successful event is to know who your audience is and create a profile. What positions do they hold? What interests do they have? What concerns do they have that maybe your virtual event could deal with? Okay. The better you know your participants, the better the connection you're going to create with them during the event. And it's going to make it a lot easier to engage with them and get them to interact, which were 2 of the other things close behind technology that you guys shared at the beginning of this session that said, you know, that's something we're struggling with. So make sure you know who's going to come. The third and final part of your strategy is the what. What are you going to offer this audience to give them a reason to come to your event? Okay. Is it going to be information because we know they want to be there to learn? So valuable different types of information. It could be topics that they really care about, and that's what you're going to highlight. So the young ladies I have with me today from the Young Women's event, when they was basically strategizing for their event, they made sure they hit on the topics that young women across the region, because that was their target audience, they made sure they were hitting on the topics that mattered most to those young women. So once you've got your strategy, that's what's going to guide your decision making. Tip 2 today is your content. Your content is key, okay? So the best way to approach your content is to begin with the end in mind. Now, I know I have a number of trainers on this call today. So beginning with the end in mind is something we as trainers do quite regularly. We sit down and we set our outcomes, our learning outcomes. What is it that we want our participants to be able to know, to be able to do, to be able to communicate by the end of the session? So starting with the end in mind and what your participants are going to take away from the session is really important. Now, this might seem obvious to some, but for those who don't realize it, the WAGS educational method can help you shape your content. So have you got people learning in small groups? Have you got the ability during your event to provide that small group interaction? Have you got them connecting with others? Is that a priority for your event? It may not be a priority for your event. So working through the 5 educational method aspects, you can then start to look at your content to make sure it's fitting with the way we do things in WAGS. Start with bang. That first couple of minutes is so important of any event, whether it's a webinar or a 3-day, 4-day, 5-day, multi-day event. Those first couple of minutes are going to determine whether or not your participants are going to tune in or tune out to doing other things. So make sure you lead it off with something really big, really engaging, or something that they really, really want. So sometimes that's your keynote speaker, if it's a multi-day event, or an interesting story, which is what I tried to share with you in this session today. The next one is keep your session short. Today's session is the content side of it is looking to be about 90 minutes. We do have a smaller group, so we're probably going to move a little bit faster through today, but 60 to 90 minutes is generally a really ideal amount of time. Once you start hitting beyond 2 hours, you are going to be heading for the sort of the territory where you're going to have people dropping out because they've got other things that they want to do. So keep it under 2 hours. 1 to 1.5 is always a good sort of place to aim. Now, the next one is a bit more of a challenge because you need to consider how you're presenting what you're going to give your participants. Are you going to have a group of put them into groups and do breakout rooms where they can have small group discussions? Are you going to have just one person talking? Are you going to run it as a question and answer? Could you put pre-recorded content in there? Now, this one is probably more relevant to multi-day events where you can give them some options to watch content you've already recorded during the event to give them options. So in relation to delivering a program that's around my path, my pace, you could then structure and provide more without putting more pressure on the presenters. So you could pre-record that or have other people in other time zones record things for you, and then you could replay them or give them participants options to replay that. You can also have it run as an interview or a demonstration. But one of the ones I've recently seen run really effectively is as a panel discussion. So at the Young Women's event in January, there was an amazing panel discussion that took place, and that was led by Francine. So Francine is now, I'm going to ask Francine to pop her camera on, and I'm going to stop sharing and allow Francine to share with you guys a little bit of what she learned running that panel discussion. So to give you a little bit of a background while I stop sharing my screen so that Francine can share hers. Francine Prudez is an Asia Pacific Young Women's Ambassador from the Girl Scouts of Philippines. And she led the panel discussion entitled Break All Barriers, which was, as I said, part of the Young Women's event. So Francine, I'm handing over to you to share those wonderful tips.
Thanks, Robin, and hello, everyone. Good afternoon, good morning, wherever you are right now. So I'm here to share with you the power of panel discussions, as Robin shared, how important it is to engage people in your audience and hear what they have to say, aside from those of what our speakers will be sharing with us. So let's go to a brief overview of what a panel discussion is. Today, we're going to know the who, what, where, and how, as well as the why of panel discussions to create, as you can see at the bottom, a powerful or impactful panel discussion. So first, the basics. What's a panel discussion all about? So this is just to jog your mind up a bit. I'm sure all of you know what a panel discussion is, but basically a panel discussion gathers experts to share insights on certain topics, and the audience will sometimes engage with the discussion. They can ask questions, or in some types of panel discussions, they limit the discussion only to the panelists. And this is often used for conferences, conventions, or meetings. So I included at the bottom a picture of the UN meeting, as you can see there. And one of the types of panel discussions that we employ is the Q&A style, like what we did during the Breaking the Barriers session in the Young Women's event. So we invited Gwen and Miss Emmanuel, and what we did was talk about how they were able to break the barriers in their own way and in their own respective fields. But there are also other common types, such as the presentation style. So the speakers will present a PowerPoint or a presentation like what I'm doing now, and there's a Q&A afterwards. And then there's their initial remark style, wherein the speakers will try to say a speech on a topic, and then you could follow it up with a question and answer form depending on the availability of time. And finally, there's the main stage style, wherein there's like a circle among the panelists, and they will be able to exchange insights, but this will not include a Q&A. So it depends on your type of audience as well as your type of speakers and the type of topic that you will be presenting on what panel fits best for you. But these are just some of the panel types. You can also use inspirations from TV series or from media outlets to guide you on how you can better conduct your panel. There really isn't one size fits all for the panel discussion. It really depends on your type of event, your context, and as well as how you would like to see the panel in terms of how it will impact the audience and what's the end goal after it. Which brings us to the question, to do or not to do. So it's like the question to be or not to be. The question of whether it's appropriate to do a panel discussion or not during your event. Well, for the Young Women's event, this is something that was already planned beforehand to have a panel discussion. So we decided to do it with a few selected speakers who really have insights on what the topic is all about and the experience to back it up. So what are the pros and cons of doing a panel discussion? First of all, if you have a panel discussion, this brings together a group of experts, like what I've mentioned, and this creates an intersectional and intergenerational angle on approaching a topic. So there's really diverseness in terms of how a topic is being presented. And because it is a panel discussion, the panelists and the audience can have a quick and live exchange of insights. This is what's exciting for me because I'm able to respond quickly to what the panelists will say, and the audience can also respond to us and say, hey, this is something I find interesting, or maybe you can expound it more. And they're able to interact with each other, which is something that's very helpful when you're trying to build this type of face-to-face vibe or setting in your online events. And I know how hard it is when you're trying to do an online event and then all you have to see when you're trying to talk to somebody are little boxes of their pictures. So it kind of feels at first impersonal, but then as you can see during panel events and discussions like this, you can see our pictures and our videos and us moving and talking around. You feel like you're bridging that digital gap a little bit, or if not most of the time. However, if you're conducting a panel discussion, the downside to this is actually, as you can see, you need more preparation for it. You're prepping the questions, you're preparing the presentations, you're briefing the speakers on what they have to do and what they have to expect when you're doing a panel discussion. And another downside is if you're not really well versed in the topic, or if you have speakers and moderators who are not given enough time to prepare, the event may flop because of lack of mastery on the topic. This is why there's much preparation needed for a panel discussion, as Angeli, one of my fellow friends in WAGS and also one of the leads for the Young Women's event, can attest to. However, if you decided to pursue a panel discussion, well, there's no question on to be or not to be, or to do or not to do, because you're already going to do it. When you're hosting a panel discussion, I have 3 set of tips for you. One is before the event, one is during the event, and one is after the event. So before the event, the pre-event activities, you have to research on your audience. You have to know what it is they are interested in. What is the common denominator among your audience? So for example, if I'm going to consider the Young Women's event, the common denominator on our audience is that they are young women, first and foremost. They're interested in Generation Z ideas and things. And for speakers such as Miss Emmanuel and Gwen, they're interested in gender equality. They're interested in how to empower girls and women regardless of age. And then for a topic which is breaking the barriers, this is something that is near to both participants and speakers because this is something that they encounter in their own leadership journey. And it's important to research on your audience and speakers because it helps you add more to the topic later on, because as a moderator, your job is not only to mention the questions out loud or to say, this is what you have to say, or this is the question that we have for you, but it is also your job to bridge the gap between the audience and speakers. You're kind of the middle person or the middle woman in there trying to conduct the discussion so that it's more smooth flowing. And then you have to meet your speakers. That's what we did 2 days before the event. We had the meeting and we talked to them. I asked them how they wanted to be introduced, what kind of questions they're interested in. And I also have to prepare the questions after the meeting so that I know what to ask of them, as well as what are possible lead questions that they might be interested in answering for the audience. So if you've prepared enough and you're now confident to lead the event, this leads us to the event proper. As a moderator or as a host of the event or the discussion, you have to lead the discussion. That's your main goal. That's your main duty inside the panel discussion. You have to know what it is that you want to share with the audience, what it is the speakers want to share as well, and you have to listen and take notes. So during the entire panel discussion, I can't show you my notes, but they're actually haphazard and quite messy. I filled up 5 pages of yellow pad paper with the things that Miss Emmanuel and Gwen shared with me. So I was listening and taking down notes. And it's quite a bit hard to do it because I was smiling in front of the camera and taking down notes at the same time. So I was a bit confused at the same time. Okay, which do I prioritize? Do I smile first or do I write down what they say? But it went well. So it's something that I could say a bit of time management on my part. And it's also nice when you're taking down notes because after the event or after the entire sharing and also exchange of insights, you have to summarize those key points. Some of the audience might be a bit confused with how the entire panel discussion is panning out if you don't summarize the key points of the event. So it's important to summarize. And when you're summarizing, you don't have to repeat it word for word. You just have to share with the audience your main takeaways from the event. So for example, when Gwen mentioned a certain aspect of her experience working with Amnesty International, I summarized it in 1 to 2 sentences and added some insights of my own as well. So by adding insights and researching beforehand, you're able to make a richer discussion for the audience to take note of, as well as add into at the Q&A part. And finally, after the event, you would want to thank your speakers, your audience, and the people behind the scenes. It's really the summary of your efforts that has made the panel discussion a success. And one of the things I would recommend for you if you're hosting a panel discussion is to reflect on the event itself. I do the sandwich method. One is, what is it that I did good during the event? And second is, what can I improve on? And the third thing is, what is the best or new thing that I did that made the event a success? So with that, I hope you learned a little bit, if not a lot, from my sharing on the powerful impact of panel discussions. And I hope that when you conduct your own panel discussions, it will be just as lively and just as powerful as you've witnessed in other panel discussions in WAGs. So thank you so much, everyone.
Thank you, Francine. That was wonderful. I know not everyone here will have seen what actually participated in the Young Women's event. I'm actually hoping to get permission to share that panel discussion on YouTube so more people can see it. It was, for me, a very amazing time. I had already spent an entire day in this event and I was somewhat tired. And then Francine came on, and the way in which she managed to facilitate this group and share the insights, I sat there absolutely amazed and went, oh my God, this girl has done just a perfect job of facilitating, which is why I've asked her to come here today and share it with you. So all going well, I will be able to share with you that discussion. We did record it. So all going well, I can share that with you in going forward. So thank you, Francine, for that insight. Hopefully it allows people to really start to consider some different ways of doing it. And as Francine highlighted, there's a lot of prep work to be done when you're working on a virtual platform. You literally do need to be planning a lot of your interactions and your engagements in advance. It's not something like when you're standing in a room of people that you can all of a sudden go, oh, hey, let's go do this. A lot of it does need to be pre-planned and pre-prepped. It's just the nature of virtual events. So thank you, Francine. Right, I now need to share my screen with you guys. So give me one moment and I will have us back up and sharing again. So all going well, that's sharing properly. It is wonderful. It's just not telling me that on my laptop. So we have done Tip number 2, it's time to move our journey on. And we are now headed for tip number 3. And there we are. So tip number 3 for today is choose the digital technologies that will support your event strategy. So it's really important that you create a space where everyone can actually fully participate. So you need to have a think about who your potential attendees are and what technologies and devices they'll actually be accessing your event on, because that's going to govern what you can do. I had a somewhat challenging, I felt it was going to be challenging, conversation with the Young Women's Planning team when they first asked me to come along and join their meeting. They had their heart set on a particular technology. And I did some research around this because I didn't know the platform all that well. And unfortunately, what I did discover about this lovely piece of technology, it didn't work well on mobile phones. When you're working across the Asia Pacific region, if you can't access the platform from a mobile device, it's going to make life a little challenging. Statistically, across the Asia Pacific region, it is mobile devices that most people will access from. So I had to break that news gently to the team, and then they took it well. They were wonderful, weren't you guys? Angelie, you can see Angelie smiling. So what I then did was say, well, what is it that you guys want out of your event? And let's find the tools and platforms to support your event the way you see it happening and the way you want it to happen. The next one is pick a platform, as I've just said, that supports the essential needs. So I asked the young women, what is it you want them to be able to do? They wanted people to be able to interact. They wanted to have sessions that were different and varied so that people could pick and choose their times. We were hopeful to get some more pre-recorded content up, but our timeframes were a little bit tight for some of those sorts of things. They also wanted to have an international sharing experience. So we chose a platform that could facilitate all of those things for them. The next one is pretty important. You need to make strategic decisions, not tech decisions. So just because your tech tool can and has a variety of features does not mean you need to use all of those features. So don't let the technology drive your event strategy. You need to stay true to the why, to the who, and to the what of what your event's going to be. So don't let your technology run away with your event. It can certainly help you enhance the key aspects of it, but don't let it run away. And now use whatever platform you're using, go and check out their website. There is a wealth of information, tools, hints, tips, how-tos on their websites and in their libraries of information and video libraries that they offer you. But also don't forget about the competitor platforms. They offer generally all of this information free of charge with free accounts where you can sign up and you can actually get all these really free hints and tips on how to use the platform you're going to use. So the young women in January used a platform called Canopy and their help center was amazing, but so too was Aventry's platform and several other platforms that I went and staked out to get the best information on how to make the best of an actual full-blown event platform. Now, I know many of you are looking down the webinar platform, the webinar sort of stream for your events. But if you are looking at multi-day events, definitely go out there and explore the platforms and feel free to contact me if you want to know more about the platform we did use in January. So now I'm going to ask Amy, who's running tech support, to pop you in a moment into some breakout rooms. So I'd like to hand the program over to you guys. So what we'd love for you to share, and I did pop it in the email I sent before this webinar, was what tools or platforms have you already seen used effectively at events? What we'd love to do is create a really cool little picture. Each group will be contributing. Each breakout room will have a facilitator. They've already been appointed, already clued up. They have access to this mind map tool. And as you guys work in your breakout rooms to introduce yourselves and share the tools that you've seen used really effectively in digital events before, your facilitator is going to add it to this really cool mind map tool. So I'm going to, it looks like it will be a 10-minute sort of breakout room, I believe. Yes, Amy's nodding at me. So because we don't have 150 people here, which is much to my relief, we have some smaller breakout rooms. So in 10 minutes, I'm hoping you can all get to meet some other people from across the AP region and share some tools. And then when we bring you back, we will put the Coggle board up. It is called a Coggle. And we will share that. We will also, after the event, download a picture of this Coggle board and share it with everyone from the webinar. So Amy, I'm handing over to you to send them off to their breakout rooms, please.
Sounds good. You'll be in a room and the facilitator's name is on your room. So you can remember where you are if you get disconnected.
Wonderful. Thank you, Amy.
Yep. See you guys soon.
They've all gone. Separate recordings?
Yeah, I'll come back in the recording.
Okay, that's all right. I'm happy to, I'll edit the recording and I'll pop some introductory stuff into it, as in, welcome to the Asia Pacific region.
We should be expecting them in 16 seconds. They should be just auto push back in.
Whoops, wasn't supposed to do that. Let's put that. Welcome back, ladies. That Coggle board looks amazing. So I'll just wait till everybody's back. Amy, do you think we've got everybody back yet?
Sorry, my internet just dropped out. Let me see what's going on.
That's all good. I think I might have
it should be everyone.
Everybody's back. Ladies, do you know that in 10 minutes that I just gave you, you have given me more tools than my 6-week survey poll on Facebook gave me before Christmas? I am super excited about this Coggle board. It's going to give us lots of food for thought about what you guys have seen out there as tools that are currently being used and that you're seeing used effectively. So our aim is we might tidy up the Coggle board a little bit, make it look a little bit nicer, and organize some of those spaghetti looking strings. But we will most certainly download this and share it with everybody after the event, and it will actually now form the basis of a resource that with the core mission team, the digital capacity building team, is about to build. So Charlotte, we have our work cut out for us, I think.
Yeah, now, very good. We're going to share it like not only on the AP, but also actually globally in WAC. So lovely. Collaboration.
Absolutely. I had a conversation with a couple of people at Core Mission team this morning, and they were a little disappointed that our webinar today was at 3 in the morning for them. So I promised them we'd share the recording with them and all the resources. So yes, for those who I have noticed some people are frantically writing, I will be sharing all of the tips and all the extra information around those tips in a Word document this afternoon, or it may be Monday. I've got a rather busy weekend. So if you don't catch everything, please don't stress. I will share that. We'll also share this beautiful Coggle board. Now, I neglected to give you a little instruction before you went. So facilitators, if you didn't get to it, I completely understand. But I did ask the facilitators, because I keyed them up beforehand, if they could, with their team, with the group that they were working with, suggest a tool that maybe that group of people would like to try going forward. So Maya, did your group get to that? Maya from New Zealand.
We did, and I asked Cannoli, who's one of our participants in our group, to share her thought.
Wonderful. So Canoli, hopefully you can unmute your microphone and share with us. Canoli, are you able to unmute your microphone? I'm just trying to find you on my list of people here.
I think she may have. Oh.
Am I audible?
There you are.
Hi, I'm Kinoli from the Sri Lanka Girl Guide Association. So at the breakout room, what we came up was Canva and Filmora. That is mainly, that is one of the main presentation tools what we use in here. And that has a lot of tools and options where we could go through the app and get it from there itself, and then make the presentation and present it at online events. So I think that is one of the tools in which is very useful for us at online events. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you. Well, I look forward to seeing some awesome Canva creations coming out at virtual events soon. Thank you to Maya's room. Marie from Brisbane, Australia. How did your room get to this question?
Just barely in the final seconds. But Cheryl had shared that at work, they often use an Annotate feature on Zoom where you can write over the presentation that's on the screen. And when I asked the room, Sarah said, hey, yeah, let's try the Annotate. So I know that Sarah's interested in looking at that feature, and I did think it was rather appealing. And we didn't get to discuss it fully as a room, I confess.
That's okay. It is a really cool feature in Zoom. It's one I don't utilize probably enough, but it was one I have utilized at a couple of virtual events, webinars over the past couple of weeks. My only advice is if you have 150 people coming in, beware, because you could be up for a bit of a challenge. But for small groups or groups even this size, it would work really, really well. So it's a great feature to remember. It was one I could actually teach my boss how to use too. So she could actually master it. So I was pretty pleased that I could get her to master that. Wonderful. So that's Marie's room. Tamina, did your group get to it?
So we cannot make in our breakout room because we've gone through a shortage of time. So I asked my participants to tell their thoughts and now if they can.
Okay. Was there anyone in Tamina's room?
They are more agreed to me that for us, our very own platform Campfire is just popping up through all the digital platforms, because Campfire is like our own platform of WAGs, and it becomes a one place to have all together. You know, you have the learning platforms, you have the communication part. We can make groups and reach each other at a very easy or single moment. So Campfire is a thumbs up for us. I think so.
It is. Campfire is very, very exciting. Unfortunately, there's probably a lot of people on this call who don't yet have access to Campfire. Those of us lucky enough to be working at region level or senior levels of our member organisations, they certainly have been granted access. So over the coming, I hate to say it, years, we are hoping to open it up to every member of WAGs, but at the moment we are slowly building the Campfire platform and harnessing it. I've been part of a trial group who's just worked through courses on the platform, and it's going to be amazing, particularly for those people who one of the 4 core languages that we use in WAGs, I think I've got 4, I apologise if it's 5, But if you don't speak one of those languages, or they're one of your second languages, you can actually translate a lot of the content on Campfire so that you can actually read it in a language that's more native to you. So it is definitely something that's dear to the hearts of people in this region. So I am excited to be involved with the Campfire project, like Tamina is, and we look forward to bringing it to more people as it starts to roll out, and we've got the capacity to bring more people on. So thank you, Tamina. Prathana, did your group come to a conclusion?
Yes, we did. I think they came up saying that Microsoft Teams, MS Teams, they would like to try, and all agreed for that platform as well.
Cool.
Yeah.
It's actually a free platform, so
yes.
anybody can actually access it. You don't actually have to have Microsoft Office or Microsoft 365. So that's awesome. And it operates very similar to Zoom. So with a whole lot of other really cool tools as well. So that's awesome. Yeah. Thank you, Prathana. Charlotte, how did your tech group go?
We didn't get into this question, but there was actually like tools that not everyone have been using. I think like Miro versus Miro, right? So the two Miro tools are actually something we talked about.
Yeah.
Anything that the group want to try? Chip and Margaret, and I'm looking at Margaret there.
Those two tools are very similar, and you'll find there's a lot of tools that do the same thing. So awesome work. And I do believe I still have Ishika. Did we end up putting you in a breakout room? Yeah? No?
No, but I have joined in Prathana's room. So yeah.
Oh, awesome. Brilliant.
As a participant.
Thank you for volunteering, and I'm sorry we weren't able to give you your own group today, but thank you for joining in with Prathana's. So ladies, I will ask Patri to stop sharing that Coggle board, if that's okay. I think she already has stopped sharing it now that I've looked at that. So it means I can pop my slides back up. So ladies, hopefully those slides are showing. Yes, brilliant.
Yes.
So that was tip 3. We're going to go a little bit faster now and try and get through the rest of these tips as we move from tip 3 on to our next 2 tips, which are tips 4 and 5. So tip 4, absolutely really, really important, is a timeline. So work out what actually needs to happen, and then work backwards basically from your event. Don't scrimp on your timeline. One of the resources we are sending you out with the things that are going out with today's webinar is a checklist and a timeline that I've worked with the Young Women's event planning team to actually help develop, because we ran into some time issues. We were a little bit stressed at the end as the event came round to happen. So we will be sharing that sort of timeline with you, and it just, as I said at the beginning, some things will relate to you, some things won't. When you're looking at a timeline, you for a virtual sort of conference, or you're looking at a couple of days where you want to run an event over a couple of days, strongly recommend a 12-week lead time. 6 months is probably more comfortable, and I can see Anjali nodding along. A webinar like this, probably looking at 4 to 6 week lead time, just to make sure everything happens. I will admit there are things that haven't happened for today's webinar, and one of those is my consistent follow-up. You guys only got a reminder yesterday, and out of 156 registrants, I think we had 33 people online. So probably on my part that I needed to send a few more reminder emails. Hey, you've registered for this, don't forget to come and join us. So that's tip 4. Tip 5. Now, the WAG's mindset should start to ring through here. It's adopt a collaborative mindset. So who in your networks, and it doesn't have to just be guiding, who could you work with more or in a different way to help make your event a success? So are there people with promotional and communication experiences? Have you got some tech experts in your life? Have you got people who make great presenters? Or have you got those who are really good at the social activities? You know, they were the ones who kept everyone going during COVID. They were the ones organizing the trivia nights and the cooking classes and things like that. So have a look at your network and see who's there. My other suggestion is don't forget the people who've already run events. So there are several young women here who now have that experience and they're willing to share it. They make great mentors. So they don't necessarily have to be on your planning team, but just for someone to sound some ideas off. I started with the young women's team as that sort of a person. Excuse me. As just, hey, Robin, how do we do this tech? What would you suggest? And from there, my role grew with them, and they were an amazing team to work with, which is also the reason why I've invited Anjali, who was the Asia Pacific Young Women event planning team lead. She is from Girl Guides, Malaysia. And these 2 points in particular were things that when it came to the debrief meeting afterwards, Anjali really did touch on. So I'm going to hand over to Anjali to share a little bit more about these 2 tips.
Hi, everybody. I'm really glad to see everybody here today. And thank you, Robin, for actually explaining those tips. There really were those are really things we really lacked on when we were planning. Not lacked on, but we really fell behind when we were planning our event. So the first thing, I'm just going to talk, I'm not going to use any slides, I'm just going to talk and kind of explain like the feedback that we felt we needed to work on based on our event. The first one is ensuring that your team includes those with the required skill set. So don't underestimate, especially for an online event, don't underestimate the different skill sets you're going to need. The slide showing on the screen actually kind of sums it up. Like, you need different people for different things. So I would suggest once you have a team together, you should assess everyone's skill set first, and then see where you need to fill in the gaps, because you might have someone who's good in designing, but you might need someone who's also good at managing social media. So that's, a gap that you would need to fill in. So assess everyone's skill set and then try and fill in those gaps to complete the team as a whole. Because again, really don't underestimate the amount of people and the amount of different skills you're going to need, especially when getting a complete team together. The second one I'm going to be touching on is engaging tech support early on. We were lucky enough to have Robin there helping us. Robin was truly the best thing I think our team could have gotten, because Robin has had experience in running these type of events, and we really needed that guidance with us. So please, please, please get tech support early on. Do not underestimate the amount of work that goes behind the scenes to get an event up, especially because we're not in person. I think that Robin said earlier, like, being in person and being online is so much different. You really need a lot of people managing things at the back, because let's be real here, online events, there's things that are not going to happen, the things that are going to happen. So you really need to have people there to back you up in case something doesn't work. And the third point I'm going to touch on again is timeline. Plan. I can't emphasize how important it is to plan. We really did have a few issues with our timeline. We underestimated the amount of time we needed. So make sure as a team, when you get that team together, try and write down everything you need done. And once that is done, break it down even more, break it down to the bone, like what exactly needs to be done. Even if it's just a one-step thing, make sure you have everything written down. And then once you have that written down, I would suggest working backwards to see how much time you would need, and always have space for you to kind of plus minus time. Like, let's say you plan for 1 week, make sure you have plus minus maybe 5 days, because not everything is going to go to schedule. There are going to be times where you might be running ahead and you might be delayed, but having that time, that leeway, will actually really help, so you're not scrimping on your time as well. And I think a few other things I have to add on was when we planned, we actually used Google Sheets, Notion. I have to actually give a shout out to Charlotte, because I attended a workshop with her on regarding Notion, and I was a complete newbie on Notion. Thank you, Charlotte, for that. That was really, really useful, especially when we were planning our event, because we were using Notion. And Google Calendar, Google Sheets, and Notion were the 3 things we used. Another really interesting tool I've used for another project I'm working on right now is the Gantt chart. I think I'm pronouncing it correct. I'm sorry if I'm not, but that's also a really good way of keeping track of your timeline. And yeah, I think that's all I have to add on. I think back to you, Robin.
Angeli, so it was amazing. Thank you for contributing first. And what I want to say is it was amazing to watch these young women debrief the planning team as they worked through the issues that we came across as they were putting the event together, and then to see the maturity in them when they debriefed it. And these were the things that came out of it. They didn't look at it negatively. They just went, right, we're going to learn and we're going to grow from this. And hence them speaking here today, because that's exactly what they have done, is they've learned and grown from that multi-day event. Now I have to confess, I hadn't run a multi-day event this big before. I've run webinars and what have you, but I've never run an event like this before. So before you think that I actually had experience walking into this, I just had a whole lot of courage to join you on this journey. So thank you. We now need to keep moving. This carpet ride needs to keep going. So we've just done 4 and 5, and we are now headed for tips 6 and 7. So tip number 6 for today is promote the event. You need to highlight to participants what they're going to gain from it. You can have the most relevant content and you can have the slickest platformer out there, but if no one knows it's happening, they're not going to turn up. So make sure you're promoting it. The social media and Facebook is how we promoted today, which is how we got as many registrants as we did. Unfortunately, our registrants didn't turn into attendees, which is quite normal. So I think we're sitting at about a 20% attendance rate, which for a virtual event is actually quite low. So it'll be something interesting to track across the region as we go forward with how other people, what reactions other people get when they run events like this at a region level, and see what the participation rate is. And I guess the next one is to promote it, plan to promote early and then promote often and have a fairly big push at the end. When I had 150 people registered, I politely asked Patri, who's actually going to talk next, to not promote it anymore, because if even half of those 150 people turned up, it was going to be a little bit more of a challenge than I was expecting for today. So it's nice that we've got a sort of a more intimate group, and it's a little bit more of a relief for me. It would have been nice to have more people. And I guess that's something we're going to learn from this event, is how do we move forward and ensure that those registrants turn into attendees. So my question to you guys is, when you're promoting events, what methods work for you? So here's a little bit of a Slido poll. Do you use newsletters, websites, social media, or instant messaging? I'm not sure if there are other things out there. If there are other things out there, by all means, pop it in the chat for me, because we will download this chat. I know some of you will have hidden that Slido window, or it's on your phone that's not quite within reach anymore. But I have 11 responses there, and I'm just going to give it another minute and see how we go. I have 12, 15. Right, I think I'm going to hit that magic button. Magic button, magic button, social media. I was expecting that because it is very much become a key part of our life. So tip number 7. is you need to communicate with your attendees. So that might sound a little strange, but preparing them before the event, communicating with them during the event, and following up after are all really important things. So we didn't probably engage as much as we could have before this event. I think you got one email from me in the days prior, and that asked you to think about tools and what sort of tools do you think we need that you've seen that could be used. But you can most certainly do that more, and particularly with questionnaires and quizzes and things like that, to make sure your content's on point. Educate, educate, educate. I can't underestimate how important it is to teach people how to use the tools that you're going to be using in there. We chose not to teach you how to use Coggle, and instead I got the facilitators in the breakout rooms to quickly learn that. They got a very like 2-sentence introduction from me about how to use it, and I just trusted that the 2 sentences was more than sufficient, and it looks like they've done an amazing job. But whatever tool you are going to use, make sure you orientate people to it, particularly if you're moving to something like what the girls used at the Young Women's event, which was an all-in-one event platform. We actually had to create a video of how to navigate the platform and how to show people all the different key features. Outline the program. So if you're running more than just one session on a webinar, outline the program, tell people what's happening. If you're giving them options, i.e. you're giving them the My Path, My Pace experience, then make sure they know where their options are. Make sure they know what the options, what's on offer, and that way they can make informed decisions. Remind them it's happening. Again, this is where I think I've fallen down with this particular webinar, is that you need to remind them it's happening. So I sent one email yesterday. My intention was to send one earlier in the week, but I struggled to get to the participant list in time. And I've had a huge week at work as well. So that actually hasn't helped. So there goes your timeline that you really need to make sure you've allowed some extra space in there to make it happen. And lastly, follow up after the event. Send them a participation certificate, send them an evaluation questionnaire, and make sure you send out any resources and things like that. So I'll be sending resources from this. We've also recorded it. Our aim is to put it up publicly on the Campfire platform. So I need to negotiate how we're going to do that. That way it'll be shared not just across the region, it can be shared in different languages, and it'll probably be shared across all of the WAGs regions. So on communication, I'm going to introduce Patri Wanada, who is the Asia Pacific Region Social Media Manager, and she was also the Asia Pacific Young Women's Event Communications Lead. Patri comes from Singapore, and she was responsible for driving the registrations for today's webinar and also promoting the Young Women's event. So Patri, I believe I need to stop sharing so I can allow you to share. I'm handing over to you. All yours.
Hi everyone, my name is Putri from Singapore. So I'm going to share with you my slides now. Give us a few seconds. Okay. Wait. Okay, so these are my learnings from marketing and communications for the event. As you can see, this is our beautiful branding that we have here. Next, yeah. This is the branding that we have, and it wasn't done by me. So going on to the next part is that so what I realized early on is that to recruit a graphic designer who fits your style and is flexible to changes, because the planning team with their opinions will always have changes to the graphic designs. So we were lucky enough to get Bron Coles from Progress Australia, who was helping me with the graphic design, as well as creating the event logo before we start launching our event on social media, so that the branding will be consistent. Because once you start promoting your event, the audience will have to see that it's the same thing. That whenever you see this logo, you'll know that it's a young women event. So you have to start with the logo first before you do the rest, like the stars behind, like the stars below that Bron created for me. And making sure that the planning team is consulted on the event logo as well, because it shows what everyone wants. So we went through a few different designs for the event logo. So what we did was that we consulted with the Western Hemisphere team, who also did the Young Women event. And then afterwards, we went through a few changes with Bron to come up with this beautiful picture that you see on top. And another part is that working with your tech team to find out what the designs that we need. So me, Robin, and Bron work very closely together behind the scenes to find out the different the things that we need for the event platform. Because Robin knows the platform better than I do, because she went through it earlier than me. So that was part one. Then further on, we have a point of contact. So the point of contact for the Young Women event was me with Braun, because Braun, because our meetings were on Thursdays to go through our events. So she went through me to like give her inputs on designs and suggestions for design to the planning team. So I was the one liaising with, I was the liaison point for Braun with the planning team. I saw a document and store your design in Canva or Google Drive. So Braun have it. Braun did it on Adobe AI, so Adobe Illustrator. But then I put everything on Google Drive so that it's all in one place, so that for the next Young Women event, in the coming years, they will know what we did and the raw designs that we have, so that they don't have to do more work in the future. And also, what happened at the Young Women event was that Robin kindly gave Braun and me the dimensions that we need for the event platform, so that Braun could come up with the designs, and then we can see what fits inside. So that was something that we did as well, that which you can think about. So work very closely with a tech team and a graphic designer. Those are the tips that is very important, I think. Next, for social media in promoting an event, like you mentioned that you want to do a webinar, but this also can apply to multi-day event and a one-day event. So I think the first step was to create a social media campaign, and I think that's important because you have to know what is your end goal in mind, as to what Robin said in the beginning, and also learning the functionalities of the platform to see how you're able to leverage your platform, because there are things that you can do like Facebook Live or YouTube Live, and it depends on the different platform whether you can do it or not. And then find out the best way to interact with your participants to get the content that you need, so they can promote them in the best way possible. Like you can have the cards that I did at the World Conference. So I did cards for the young women participants, because we wanted to showcase them. Because as a region, that is one of our main goals, is to showcase the young women, and also work with our program team, because they are the people who had the content. So work with them to get the content that you need, maybe like pictures from speakers, or like like the highlights that they want to showcase. So this is something that you need to work closely with everybody in. And the last ones is that in the lead up to the event, showcase your event schedule, because people may not know what time zone you're in, especially for AP. There's so many different time zones, as me and Anjali found out in the beginning of our Young Women event. So showcase your time zone, because people might not participate if you don't know what time zone that you're doing in. And also the panel speakers and your guest speakers, so you can get registrations in. So also finding out the method of registration your planning team wants to do. Because as a planning team in the beginning, we decided to do it as a free-for-all event, so that it's made it more accessible. So as a team, we decided that was one of the decisions that we made, which also need to be communicated to your comms team. So get your comms team made in early, so that they will know what is happening in the event. And then also plan out what each member of your comms team need to do for the event. So I had a graphic designer and an events editor as well, who was helping me with coming up with the video at the end of the event, and then showing it in the week after the event ended. And then because there's no photographer, so you can appoint someone who takes screenshots during the event for you, or you can get your facilitators or your participants to help you do it. And also and then also collate your screenshots into different folders, so that it's easier for you and your event editor to do it, to get your video together at the end. Yeah, that's it from me, but then there is more, so you can find me if you need more tips for social media and marketing. Thank you.
Spitry. So hopefully that gave you some cool ideas about different ways that you can certainly brand not only your communications, but your platform. So not all platforms will allow you the extent of branding that these young women enjoyed back in January, but certainly explore what your platform can do, and then you're able to. So in Zoom, for things like this, you can see the branding, and you can't see my hand. I've put branding, our AP region branding up and around. So there are ways to work around it with things like backdrops and things like that. So right, I think that was tips 6 and 7, which means we need to keep moving. And hopefully that's sharing properly again. So tips 6 and 7, which means we are now moving on to tip 8, which is probably what a number of people have joined us today for. So tip 8 is all about involving and engaging your attendees. There's lots of different ways you can do this. And I guess it depends on your event strategy as to what you're going to do. But here are 10 fairly common, easy to do, not too difficult, not too challenging ways to do it. A chat box, that beautiful chat box in somewhere down the bottom of your screen that we use here in Zoom. It's a great way. Something's going wrong technically. Guess what? Hey guys, so what's the best thing you've learnt today? You can throw questions into the chat box, and it's something that you can do really ad hoc, and it doesn't need a lot of planning. Just make sure it's enabled. And I guess that's what it comes down to, is making sure these tools are correctly enabled. Surveys and polls. So within Zoom and a lot of the other virtual conferencing tools and video conferencing tools, there's plenty of ways to do surveys and polls, or you can use extra tools like we have done today and use Slido. And there's certainly several others, and you guys have certainly suggested them, things like Mentimeter and SurveyMonkey as well. Yes, I still have the Coggle board up and I can still see it. Storytelling. People underestimate the ability of what a story can do. So today I've tried to link our tips together on a magic carpet ride and about discovering a new world and creating a different world based on the experience of the Young Women's event and how it created that whole new bubble of a world that we moved into. So if you're able to craft a story that not only fits your audience, but your content, it can be really engaging. There's a variety of authors who write on this topic, and it's currently a book that's on my bedside table by Nancy Duarte. And she has written a number of books, things like Slidology and different things that help you with storytelling. And failing finding anything from Nancy, YouTube and Google can certainly help you out with storytelling tips. Quizzes and games. There's lots of different tools that will help you to do that. It can be, from a trainer's perspective, we use them to engage people, but you can also use them just for fun, like a trivia night and things like that. Collaborative spaces like our Coggle board, like Miro and Mural that one of the breakout rooms were discussing. There's lots of things where you can create that collaborative space. I guess my best piece of advice around collaborative space is make sure the space is big enough for your audience. If we had more people in today, I would say in excess of 50 people, there's no way I would share that sort of a space with someone. Restrict it the way I did it today and share it. But if you've got smaller groups, certainly using those collaborative spaces to do things, you can generally structure them. So you can actually structure the activity on there and have some preset content up there that they then work through. So things like debriefs and things like that also work quite well in collaborative spaces, but brainstorming and project planning and all of that also work really well. Breakout rooms. A well-planned breakout room activity can help people connect. And although today's goal was learning and not necessarily networking, I'm hoping you did actually get to meet some new people in your breakout rooms today. And they're obviously just one of those easy tools that is generally on a lot of things. I haven't tried it in Microsoft Teams, but I know Zoom breakout rooms are very popular. Social activities. So if you're going to run a multi-day event or a series of events or things like that, and it's beyond just a webinar, do remember your social activities. You can have a cooking class, a yoga class, a game show night, You've got things like minute to minute and trivia nights. Just have a think about what you could do differently. People were mastering this during COVID lockdowns. So go back to those things that people were sharing and have a look. It certainly brings people together. The Young Women's event ran an international night using expo booths. So we were on a corporate platform, a platform designed for corporate events. We took an expo booth, which you would normally put a sponsor in, and we turned it into MO booths. So each member organisation had their own booth. They could share videos, activities, information about the participants. So we had wonderful little introductions from all the different participants, and then some activities from each of them that people could come in and out of that little expo as a social type thing and learn some different things and try some different things. Depending on your platform, you can also have people man those booths, or you can have them set up their own little demo time. So they might do a Thai cooking class or a Japanese origami class. So you can set those sorts of things up. So don't underestimate the power of a social activity, which we never do in guiding, I don't think anyway. We are very much for those social type things. A photo booth or a photo gallery is also a great way to get people sharing photos and sharing where they are and what they're doing, or groups of photos and how much they're enjoying their event, because as Patrice says, all of that stuff then can feed back into your social media, and it can drive not necessarily the event stuff, but certainly, you know, things outside the organization. So you can actually start to promote what we do within the organization using those sorts of things. I've spoke about exhibition booths before, so get creative. You could be sharing resources in your exhibition booths. It could feel like an expedition, but you can certainly look at different things. You could have different departments sharing in there. If you've got like a state or a national event, you could have each group doing it, having their own little booth and sharing what they do. And external suppliers or sponsors. I mean, it's generally what we do in guiding, but if you do have sponsors sponsoring your event, then certainly that they do offer the options when you have that ability on those sorts of platforms. Freebies and giveaways. Now, these can be, they don't have to be expensive, and then you don't actually have to pay for anything. Digital resources. So I've promised you guys a whole stack of resources, like the list of tips today, all of these engagement strategies, a checklist and a timeline. Ability to access this recording later on, hopefully on Campfire. So they're all different things, reading lists, further learning lists, and all that sort of thing. The more tech savvy might want to do images and pictures, or the frames that you put around yourself on Facebook and things like that, to not only help promote the event, but also get that engagement of people wanting to be involved. So I've just given you 10 there, very different and varied ways of doing it. Obviously, you've also got all the different tools that you can help you to support these types of things. My question for you guys, though, out of those 10, which 3 would most engage you? So grab your Slido and pick that all 10 are listed in there, and tell me which 3 are most going to engage you. So I'll give you a couple of minutes now that I've got over my little coughing fit. I'll give you some time to scroll through the list and be able to pick them. And I've got a feeling you've got to drag them up into your list, or you click on them. So we've got about 8 people. Let me see if we can get some more people as they finish off and find the ones that they like best on that list. Awesome. So I've got 12. I'm going to click it through now. Hopefully you can still answer if you need to. Oh, we have, oh, they are still coming in. That's awesome. Anyone who goes back and uses Slido in the future, if you decide to move to the answers poll before everyone's answered, it still keeps changing, so people can still answer. Always nice to know. So it looks like quizzes and games is a big winner with you guys, along with the chat boxes and the surveys and the polls. So the other ones, although they are on the list there, probably aren't as popular as such. So if that gives you a bit of an idea of what engages guiding people from this 30 odd people we have here today, take that forward as an idea of the types of things you could use for this sort of a guiding audience. Right, that is tip 8. 2 tips to go. 9 and 10, here we come. So tip 9, and it's all about those technology issues that you might have. So it's all about preparing well. The better prepared you are, the better it's going to go. Perfect planning prevents poor performance, the 5 Ps that most trainers would have heard in their life before. The better prep and planning you do, the more likely you will succeed. However, this is the best piece of advice I picked up in the lead up to the Young Women's event. Don't expect perfection. Something's going to go wrong, and as soon as you accept that perfect isn't going to happen, that's going to make your life so much easier. And it's probably one of the key things that kept me going through the Young Women's event as the tech support in the background when things didn't go to plan and I had speakers who weren't able to access the platform like they had been able to 30 minutes before. When you just accept that perfection just isn't going to happen, your life gets a whole lot less stressful. So practice, practice, practice. Have a run through a week out. I can't underestimate the ability that can impact on you to just remove all the little minor niggles. I'm not sure if anyone here actually participated or got to participate last weekend in the Asia Pacific region's sessions around the region plan going forward. If anyone saw the tech run through for that 3 or 4 days out, we needed that tech run through, and I'm quite sure that tech run through just made that whole series of webinars, because they ran, I think, 2 or 3 of them, so much easier for them. So it happens to everyone, and don't skimp on that one. Be human. The more polished your performance, the more boring it's going to be. I know that sounds really, for those of us who are perfectionists, it just doesn't sound right. You just want it to be polished. But if you want a polished performance, you might as well just go and create a YouTube video and post it. Webinars are about emotions. They are about those little human moments and the pauses and the stumbles and the things that happen as you move along. But what you need to know is the research shows that humanity, it generates trust and empathy among those participating. So it actually creates that sort of sense of connection and what have you. So you sort of have an audience who's more open to what you're going to say, because you know you're not going to be up there doing perfect. Yeah, so don't forget that human little bit. It's okay to, as I have been for the last 15 minutes struggling with coughing, it just happens. Those technical problems, you guys said it was the biggest thing that concerned you. It's going to happen. But the best thing you can do is have a plan of action. So my slide set today that I'm sharing with you, there is at least 2 other people on backup with that slide deck. No one actually has my scripts. They've got a rough idea of what I'm talking about, and they've got the handout. But I have people on backup for slide deck. Amy has 2 other people helping her. So Anjali and Patri are also pitching in to make sure that we got all the breakout rooms happening and things like that. So just make sure your presenter has a backup plan. So I actually watched it, and a group of young women presenting a session, and one of them dropped out, the lead dropped out, and not one of their other participants actually stepped up at that time. They were all really, really nervous, which I can understand. So what we did for when they ran it the second time, we made sure they had a plan of attack. We made sure that they all knew what they were talking, what was actually happening, so they could just jump in if the internet connection breaks down. So have a backup plan there for when the tech does go down. And then just run with it. If it doesn't happen, it doesn't happen. People are pretty understanding in this day and age. And I guess it's, as if you've planned and prepped it, then you should be able to still roll with something for your event. So make the most of it, and just connect with the people that you've got there. Last but not least, you need to evaluate your event. most digital platforms that you use will give you a whole stack of data around who registered, who attended, how long were they attentive for, all sorts of weird and wonderful things. I know Anjali was awfully surprised when I was able to tell her who had attended the Young Women's event and exactly how many sessions people had actually logged in for. So that really guided who got a participation certificate, because if you only logged in for one activity, then it was a good chance Anjali was not going to send you a participation certificate. So that was really great. So make sure you have a look at what the stats and figures are there. I know I'll be using that today so that I know, make sure all of you 33 who came get all the resources you need, but we'll still share it widely among the other 120 who may not have made it here today. Now, this is the WAGs thing that I've learned in the last couple of weeks. I've used REAL, so the real quality of guiding, so that sort of model that's promoted by WAGs. I've used that as an eval method, but the one I've learned in the last couple of weeks is the 10 leadership outcomes. You can use those 10 leadership outcomes from our leadership mindsets to evaluate an event, and we actually did it live during a session. So do have a look at some of the tools and things that we're given through WAGs to evaluate. Today we're actually going to evaluate using REAL because I don't think we've got the patience to do 10 questions. So we'll do 4 quick questions in a few minutes to evaluate today. But do consider those sorts of things. REAL does give you an indication of the quality of and I guess it's WAG's way of helping us to assess the quality of our guiding programs and what we do for our participants. So finally, make sure you debrief with your staff and whoever's supported you, because that feedback and that learning is sometimes just as important as running the event. I have seen the young women who ran the Young Women's event in January grow simply from that debrief meeting. Their confidence in knowing that, yes, we had a challenge, but yes, we dealt with it and we're moving forward and we've learned, I think was just as important for those young women as actually running the event. So, ladies, that's our 10 tips. It has taken slightly longer than I'd hoped, but hopefully it's given you some ideas around virtual events. It'll be awesome to start seeing more happening across the region. And obviously the digital capacity building team of the Asia Pacific region are here to help and support. So if you need a hand, want to bounce some ideas off or anything like that, we are most certainly here to help and support, and we can also put you in contact with others who might be a little bit closer or more in your time frame or time zone. We do operate across obviously a huge variety of time zones who also might be able to help you out. So we're here to support and guide you along that way if you need it. So without further ado, I'd love you to help evaluate today's session. So we'll start with how relevant the session was. And then we'll move through the other 3. So I'm hoping, there it goes. I can actually see the results live today. So that's awesome. That is pretty cool. I hadn't seen Slido do this. So I'm going to push it to the next one. I'm quite sure you might still be able to answer the previous ones. So how engaging, I will err on the side of saying exciting, but our E in REAL does stand for both of them, was today's session. I know we have thrown a lot of information at you, and I realized that, so hence I was curious how this one was going to go. Awesome, and it's already jumped to relevant. You guys must have the entire set in front of you. So the relevant one is, no, it's gone back to relevant, my apologies. There's exciting and engaging. Right, accessible. I'm hoping, I guess I'm also curious about this one too, using a technology that I hadn't used before in Slido. But from that sort of a result, I guess it wasn't too hard. So that's for me is a great learning, and for the team that's put this together. Awesome. And finally, learner-led. Now, I know this one's going to be a challenge, and I'm open to whatever responses come in here. hopefully we can improve how learner-led we go forward. And that's probably about what I was actually expecting. It is sometimes quite hard to facilitate learner-led in this sort of environment, and particularly when I was expecting some really huge numbers today. The fact that we didn't was great, but considering the entire webinar was planned based on some big numbers, it's quite hard to change that up on the fly. So I'm quite accepting of a 3-star review there. So I guess going forward, what further support, assistance or development or mentoring do you think you need to feel more confident about running virtual events? I'm also happy to accept in here anything else digital you think you need support with, or you think guiding people could need support with. As the capacity building team for the region, this is what we've been put in to do, is to provide support and encouragement and facilitation to get people more engaged digitally. Digitals is not going anywhere, unfortunately. It is pretty much here to stay. Thanks to COVID, it advanced quite quickly. Yeah, I guess we'd like to know if there's anything we can do more to support you. And on that same note, I am about to go and check to see if we've got any Q&A questions in Slido, and we don't as yet. So Amy, have you seen, while they're filling in that, have you seen any questions pop up in the chat that we really do need to answer?
No, nothing specific at this time.
Awesome, thank you. So there is a comment there that brainstorming platforms without actually finding out what they do was of limited use. I do understand that, and I guess we were just trying to open people's eyes to some of the opportunities that were out there. And I guess it is very much when you're learning new tech, it's about finding out what's out there and then going in and having a play. So someone mentioned practice in there. Practice, yes, is absolutely essential, along with time to just play. I don't call it practice, I call it play. I just go and play with some tools. So I guess the idea of the brainstorm was to just open your eyes, and now you've got the opportunity to go and play. So there's people would like some training around some of the tools we could use for virtual events, and you'd find that more helpful. That's not a problem. What I might do is potentially survey people, pop a survey up on Facebook and find out on the AP region page and find out what tools people would like training on. So if there's a particular tool you'd like some more training on, or the ability to practice with, we can certainly do that. Training digital tools in this format can be a little bit challenging. So we just need to explore whether this format's great, or if we can share resources to help people explore those tools. So there's some other really cool information coming in there. I probably don't have the chance to address all of it, but Amy and myself and the AP team will certainly take these on board, and it'll help shape the future webinars that we do actually run. So thank you for sharing there. And I guess now it's a time to hand over to you guys. Have you got any specific questions that maybe we haven't answered? I know we've thrown a lot at people today. But is there anything specific that we haven't covered that maybe you'd like us to share on?
Robin, there is a question coming up in the polls around intergenerational connection.
Okay. I think that came in on the support poll. And is there a team member, Amy, is that something you would like to address? Because I know you've probably worked across more generations in that sort of a capacity than I have. I
don't think I have anything specifically
no,
that I have seen. Are there other people on the call?
That's what I was going to say. Is anyone else got some tips on how to generate that multi-generational sort of aspect to what we do.
Can I just add one tip might be helpful to have the intergeneration connection. So when it comes to senior generation, we have a lot of technology issues where they don't have technical expertise, but the younger generation has those expertise. So what we can do is we can combine both generations. We can get one person to help a senior member in their tech support or teach them how to use Zoom or how to use MS Teams or something. Then the connection, we can connect them and build their relationship. So that while we help each other, it will help the senior members to join webinars or whatever they want to join online, and encourage them to join virtual events, and younger members will get a chance to interact and build the connection.
Awesome. Thank you, Prathna. There's been another question around sharing of resources. Yes, most of Campfire is restricted, but there is a public access section which we're trying to build so that anybody can access those resources, which is exactly where the things from today are going to go. So if you've got things that you're willing to share across MOs, member organisations, not just our region, but all regions, then we'd love to hear from you. And I'm sure the Campfire team would love to hear from you to build that side of it. So it would be public access. So it's open to anyone who actually visits the platform, and you don't actually need to log in. So that's where we're hoping to share some of the resources in that way. There's also the ability to share through things like YouTube to create your own channel, and Google Drive and things like that. So, but if you're talking about sharing across the region, then certainly get in contact, because we'd love to start matching people up and building those resources up as well. So I guess I can't see too many other questions that we sort of haven't answered in that chat section. So on behalf of the Digital Capacity Building team and our presenters today, thank you for joining us. Thank you for bearing with us over the last couple of hours. I know we've, as I said, given you a lot, but we are hoping to be able to share with you all those extra resources, and we hope we've maybe inspired you to create an event that's maybe a little bit different, maybe that opens access up to greater areas or people across a wider area of places. If there is something specific, I will go through what you guys have put into the Q&A section of Slido. But if there's something specific there, which there was a few people there asking for support or something like that, please do drop us an email. I've just popped my email address up and how you can access the team. We would love to hear from you. And we'll do our best to provide you with some support and guidance. We are a small team at the moment, but we have capacity to build that team with more people. But it really goes on what you guys want and what people are requesting and the types of support, because we'll build the team in that direction to make sure we're then able to give MOs the support that they need. So I'm going to hang around for a little bit if there's anyone who's got some specific questions. Otherwise, I shall let you guys go, and thank you for joining us. And we will, no, I've got someone who wants to talk.
Robin, group picture, please.
Group picture. Oh, social media Patri wants a group picture. Before we go, I can't forget the group picture. I'll be in trouble, big trouble. So ladies, if you would like to participate in a group shot that will most likely land on Facebook, now's the time to straighten the hair, set up the microphone, make yourself look pretty, position yourself right, because